Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Markets Hunter. I am your host, Hunter Gaylor, and I am joined live today with the CEO, Tim of Dais Corporation. Their stock symbol is DLYT. Again, that's DLYT if you're following along. We've had a lot of great conversations with Dais. We've been following the company for some time now. We've seen some, really interesting and fascinating technologies come out, from products like Nano Air, Conserve ERV, a lot of their HVAC products we've gone in. So I encourage everyone to like and subscribe, follow this channel. And we're also joined by Brian, who is the CTO of Dais. Thank you, Brian, for joining us as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the company. So, Tim, I'm going to kind of give you the floor. It's good to have you on the program. Tim, what's going on? Let's update kind of the shareholders and people that have been directly asking me questions, and I think reaching out to you as well, asking questions about just some of the housekeeping, some of the filing, the statuses, what people should be expecting. You said that they'll be very excited and very happy when things are filed. So can you give us a little bit of insight into the timing and things that are going into that? And then we'll go into, kind of the rest of the conversation today.
Sure. First and foremost, thank you again for having both Brian and me join you and have the opportunity to speak to people, because in the past 3 weeks, I have received many, many calls from people that say that they have seen this segment, your segment, talking about the company, and they have questions for us. And I think that's great. Obviously, you can't spend a lot of time doing it, but it's important to talk to the shareholders and get their feedback. One of the issues that since the 14th of April has been in people's minds is, hey, Dais, where are you with your filing? Well, we didn't file the Form K to year 2022 until last Friday. And the reason we did that is because we needed to put in place some funding, and the funding was tied to money that was going to be paid to the audit firm. And the funding was exorbitant in terms of its dilution characteristics to the company. And being a large shareholder, Brian and I, well, we didn't like that too much. The board didn't like it. So we said we were going to fund the part of the business that needed it separately. And we did that through, accounts receivable.
Okay.
Profits. And me personally, and I said this, that I think that's a really good thing. One of the people I talked to, one of the shareholders, called and said, you don't understand. You may think that's good, but the reality of it is that when you aren't able to trade, that hurts everybody.
Right.
And I understand that. I really, really do. But for the amount of time that we were down, in my opinion, and you could say that I'm wrong, but in my opinion, my judgment, I felt that it was the better thing to do because the dilution was substantial. And we've got to stop looking at things. We've got to start looking at it more like that, as opposed to, well, we do what we have to do to get money. No, we've got a lot further along, and that's why we chose as a company to do what we did.
Well, there you have it. I think that's pretty clear. And for wrapping up any questions that people might have, you can feel free to reach out on Twitter. You can feel free to reach out to any of the contact information for Tim. He's been very open as a CEO. I think that speaks to his leadership ability and his willingness to communicate properly with shareholders. I know there's a lot of executives out there that don't have the same level of transparency or communication skills with their company or with their shareholders as to what's going on. I'm a big fan of Dais. I really like what they're doing. I think for the overall good of humanity, I think it's very important. And going into that, I think that's a good little bridge into what I would like to kind of talk about today for our listeners and those that may be watching this particular program. We've talked a lot about the potentialities of where this market can go. We've talked about what the Nano Clear product can do. We've talked about the membrane. We've talked about the crisper drawers to keep fruit and vegetables longer, which leads to a reduction of food waste. We've talked a tremendous amount about just the elimination and the harmful results that you get from all the things that PFAS is in. So with that being said, I really want to go back to one of the first conversations that we've ever had, Tim, and of course we're joined by Brian. So Brian, I'll ask this to you. Tim gave me kind of a trivia question, historical little trivia question, is we really have not had any major innovation in the air conditioning, HVAC business or industry, if you will, since really Carrier first invented it way back when. And so what are you doing from a technical term, if you could make it kind of break it down for our audience? What was the old, if we look at the old, what was the old kind of air conditioner versus, we'll say, the new Dais type of enabled conditioner? I'll call it the air conditioner of the future.
Thank you, Hunter. I appreciate the chance to join you guys. I can sum that up by saying that air conditioning over the last century and plus has depended on changing the temperature of the air and using a refrigerant to move heat in and outside of into the building and out of the building. And so if you cool the air enough, then the water that's in the air as humidity eventually has no more room and it comes out and you've dried the air. What we are doing with NanoAir is using our membrane as an advanced interface between the air and between water. And so we move water molecules around between the air streams, between liquid water and the air, and in and out of the building by using our membrane to directly make that move. So we're able to eliminate the refrigerants from the equation, and we're able to give you independent control over the temperature and humidity, which has never been possible with traditional air conditioning. So in your previous air conditioning, if you wanted to dry the air, you had to cool it at the same time. That's no longer the case. So you can cool the air, or you can choose to dry the air separately. And once you've reached your temperature set point, you can continue to remove moisture from the air, or you can remove moisture from the air before the air gets really cold. So you have a lot of flexibility, and that allows us to do what we need to do with more energy efficiency than previous generations of air conditioning. So this is what's referred to a lot of times as non-vapor compression air conditioning. And so it's the wave of the future. There's a lot of interest and support all the way from the Department of Energy through to the public and private sectors. And it's going to be how we make energy efficient air conditioning for the future.
So let me ask this question, because you said a lot of kind of like key buzzwords in there that I'm picking up on. Okay, one is when you talk about we talk about cooling the air. So in a building, like we have our our big HVAC units out there, and it's pumping the cold air in and pulling the hot air out, or looking at the signs. But when you say that you can dry the air, okay, when we look at these new types of, I'll call it smart thermostats, right? And these smart thermostats like Nest or Google or any of these home thermostats, and you can, turn it hot and cold. Will we be able to, in the future, maybe this is just like the Jetson side question coming out, right? But will we be able to press the button that says dry the air versus this? And so you'll actually have that level of in-depth functionality?
Correct. So old style air conditioning controlled the temperature and you removed moisture indirectly. And so we will have two separate functions. So you can set a temperature and say, I want to be 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can also set a relative humidity and say, I also want to be at 45% relative humidity. And it'll pursue those goals independently. And that also allows you to do some interesting things to save energy. For instance, with drier air, you might not need the temperature to be as cold. So maybe you bump your thermostat up to 77 degrees because the air is no longer clammy. And so you're able to get rid of heat by evaporation from your body more efficiently. So there's a lot of comfort implications to it.
I mean, this to me that really is a game changer. If we did nothing else but talk about how I can have a smarter thermostat. I mean, I look at it basically like this. Florida, you're Florida as well. So we know in the summer it gets hot, but it also gets very muggy because it's very humid, right? So, even when, like today, it was raining, but it's humid. But when you go to California, it can be super hot and you can be in the desert, but there's no humidity. So it's a level of comfort. So if I have the ability to be sitting in my living room, right, and I can adjust both the temperature and the humidity, I could create essentially the perfect creature comfort area.
Yes. But what you did is you just painted a picture that underscored why this works. And that is the architecture itself is fundamentally different. The membrane, the nanomaterial, is tailored to work with that architecture. So what you see today that's been out there since Willis Carrier did his thing back in 1903. Sure, there are a lot of good things that have happened to it, and it's more efficient than it's ever has been. But there's a fundamental flaw in the way that it works. We get rid of that by changing the basic architecture, mating that, managing the features from the membrane, and then doing the things that Brian just mentioned. So it's a fundamental shift in everything you know about air conditioning.
Well, I mean, that's incredible, because if I have the ability to go in, you know, it's almost like that, you know, maybe this is a silly kind of example, but, you know, it's, you know, this porridge is too hot. This porridge is too cold. This one is just right. Right. So we've never really been able to, you know, go in and, well, you know, mom likes it hot, right? Dad likes it cold. You know, the daughter likes it this way. They like it this way. So there's really not been kind of like an equilibrium factor. It's like, oh, okay, well, you know, maybe they don't mind a little bit more humidity, but a little less heat, right? A little less humidity, a little bit more cooling, whatever it may be. There's a way that you can start finding out. And I guess based on the way technology is going, we'll be able to literally, you know, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, you can pick the percentage points that you want.
Exactly. So you can say, I want to be drier, or I want to be more humid. You've got that choice independent. And that makes for a much more comfortable room, because with you're kind of hitting the humidity problem with a big stick these days with an existing air conditioner. Your choice is, well, I want less moisture. I need to make the air colder. And so now you end up with a room that maybe has less moisture, but it's also cold.
So,
and, you know,
what is that?
Change that.
Just kind of going back to the, you know, my basic kind of, you know, science is oxygen rich environments, right? So when you have like a lot of humidity, or you go into an area and you kind of feel like, if it's really humid, you feel almost claustrophobic, like you're being smothered by the heat. I know in Florida sometimes that happens, right? But when you're dealing with this drying and this humidity aspect with a new type, obviously, and I just want to phrase this the right way for our audience, is the purification aspects by reducing the amount of humidity. Because if you're reducing humidity, you have less like moisture particles in the air that may be carrying some sort of, you know, airborne virus or illnesses or pollution like pollen or something like that. So if it's in the air, people have allergic reactions to it. With this type, will you be able to filter out, okay, that type of information? It's not only do you have a better comfort, but you have a cleaner, healthier air you're breathing?
Yes, it can. And a lot of that too is related to how you bring fresh air into the building, which was why we work so well in concert with our conserve system. But right, because you're pulling the humidity out of the outside air, a lot of times that's a big problem for today's air conditioners. Not so much the temperature of the outside air, but the amount of moisture. And so you're able to improve your outside air ratio, which allows you to breathe much healthier air. So it's, and we even go beyond removing the floating droplets of moisture. So we're removing the water molecules individually from the air. So, so you not only get the cleaner air that's not carrying the particulates on droplets coming around, but you're also pulling the vapor out of the air.
So when you have this is going to eliminate the need for these room purifiers, correct? Because you're just circulating, you're taking care of the whole thing in one system.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell people that they shouldn't use a room cleaner, but I think it would be a lot less necessary to people. They'll feel the improved health. Fresh air is the #1 solution, according to most of the people you talk to at the EPA or ASHRAE. If you want healthier air, the #1 thing you can do is bring in more clean air from outside. And so handling the moisture allows you to do that.
Well, I've never understood why we've, you know, I mean, I've always looked at natural sunlight, you know, breathing in, getting some fresh air, you know, and they say you're working in an office, so let me just go take a break and we go out and get some fresh air. But, you know, with our schools, and I'm just thinking of the market potential here. I would want this to be in every school system. I would want this to be in every major office complex. I would want this to be in my home. I would want this type of stuff, because if I know I can breathe, you know, fresh air, and I can drink purified water that doesn't have all these contaminants in it, I'm just going to live a happier and better and healthier life.
The last decade has been showing a number of very good new studies proving that the improvements in productivity and learning ability are dramatic, not just noticeable, but you can double your cognitive performance by increasing the amount of fresh air you breathe. So it's really shown to be of great importance.
So just kind of in closing, Brian, I want to get your thoughts. How close, I mean, you're already rolling out Conserve. You're already working with the HVAC and NanoAir and some of these things. How close are we to commercial? Like if I wanted to, if I'm building a house theoretically and I want to put this system in my house, how do I do that? Do I have to go through a contractor? Can I buy this from Lowe's? How is this working?
We haven't done anything in the residential market yet. That's coming in the very near future. Our efforts have largely been commercial. So at this point, if you're talking about your home, it's not going to be there just yet, but shortly.
Well, that's what I'm waiting for, because I think this is really a game changer. Because if I can control the humidity in my house along with the temperature regulation, then it would really be great. Because some people like more humidity. Some people like more humidity. Some people like less. I mean, that's why people live in California versus living in Florida, or living in the high desert versus, the Northeast or something like that. So it really creates very interesting opportunity in the marketplace to be able to customize these environments. So that's
you're right. But the thing is, the lurking in the background, or actually the big issue in the background, is that it is so much more efficient that it influences the CO2 situation, which is climate change. That's the part that gets a lot of people really excited. We've done some studies here that show some fantastic opportunities with modest adoption of the technology around the world. By passing air over a piece of plastic, you can put a pretty big dent in what's being saved. So that's really the goal here, is to do that, but at the same time come out with a product that has roughly the same price points, but a heck of a lot more efficiencies, a lot better service, features, things that make you happier. So everybody wins. The environment wins. You win because your pocket feels better. That's kind of the direction we're taking with it.
Yeah. Well, Brian and Tim, I really appreciate your time today on the Markets Hunter podcast. I love having these conversations because we can dive down. It gives me a lot of information I can talk about with my friends and colleagues and the marketplace in general. And I think conversations like this are important because it educates not just the shareholders of what's coming down the pipeline, but the status of the company and really kind of the exciting innovations that are going on. It's not just we're hiding things in a box. We want this to come out. We want this technology to be successful because it does lead to a much better story for, not just us individually, but us as a, as a community and as a population, if you will. Right. So I think it's very good. So Tim, Brian, thank you so much for joining me again. Tim, do you have any final words that you'd like to say on today's broadcast?
Same words I always use, that the opportunity is massive, and we're looking at a focused portion of it. And that's what we want to do, is get out there, get bigger, and we'll work on more and better. But looking at it from an investment perspective, this isn't something, in my opinion, our opinion, that you buy to make a cash killing 1 week to the next. This is something that we would prefer people look at as an 18 to 24 month adventure. And it will be just that. The things that Brian talked about, once you ring off here and you start thinking about them, it's a fundamental underscore change.
Yeah.
A little company like us has the ability, the technology. With the investors' help and focus with us, we're going to do this.
I mean, I think personally, and I say this from the Market Hunter's perspective, but it's a massively undervalued stock. We look at companies with fundamentals, technology. We look at the companies that have, that 3 to 5 year, buy and hold, because this is really where we're going to start seeing the market take off. And we already see your international conglomerate partnerships that you have, the things that you're already doing with, expanding the food life in refrigerators, things like that. But now with, the Conserve and some of these other things, it's going to be incredible to see what's going on. So Tim, as always, Brian, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Hunter. Appreciate the help. Everybody, thank you for supporting us, and we'll be back.
Thank you. And we look forward to talking to you again very soon. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Brian, for being on the program today.
Thanks, Hunter. Take care.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was another episode of Markets Hunters. And I will just take a moment to say, out of all of the different CEOs and the people that I talk with, Tim is one of the few CEOs that puts his contact information out there and says, look, if you have questions about our company, feel free to reach out. They're working very hard on being able to establish a lot of these filings and everything. I know I've gotten a lot of messages on Twitter and LinkedIn asking the questions. So we're doing our best here with schedules to provide you the best coverage we possibly can with regards to these different companies, where they're at and what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, we're an advocate for these companies. We're an advocate because it is our goal at the Markets Hunter program to expand and explore the innovations of these companies, because there's nothing negative about having a new air conditioner and some of these technologies that are just going to help you live better, live healthier. And so we're a big fan of the company. We really like what's going on. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share this across all platforms. Make sure you follow us, like, share, and subscribe. All the information will be in the description below. And we look forward to having you tune in again. Tune in, all week, because, constantly new interviews are coming on. We're talking with new companies and a lot of stuff that's going on. We've got some big announcements coming out about some new exposure and some new platforms that we're going to be on. I can't mention any of those yet, but Markets Hunter platform is changing and expanding for good and not for negative. So we're looking forward to that. And, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. The Dais logo's at our top corner here. The stock symbol's always down at the bottom, DLYT. We always are rolling up what they're doing down at the bottom. So, this is all a good platform to be on, and we appreciate everyone tuning in. And that's it for another edition of Markets Hunters. This is Hunter signing off.